Welcome to The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, a Let's Play with Link6616, my awakening as a Let's Player. Now some of you have already seen some of the contents of this episode before, because you will have watched the pre-play, which is a different playthrough of this dungeon, but is one that does not have the experience of me actually having done it before. Also, some of the commentary is a little bit different. It's probably not as interesting, because I'm not as sure what I'm actually planning to say. Not that I can ever remember entirely what I intend to, but often key points get established in either way. So let's start with this. I hate these little mask buggers. They are absolute pains. And the hookshot, which is the item for the dungeon, takes the masks away. It is so wonderful. And we have, I probably passed over it, I probably shouldn't have. The need for the item has been clearly established by a chest in one of the earlier rooms we walked past, with a very, very large gap that can clearly not be done by Pegasus boots. While this isn't a terribly great puzzle, I do really appreciate that you assume that it's going to be a kill all the monsters, when it's to push those blocks into place. And in actual fact, it's pushing them into place, it is not just pushing the blocks. This room here sets up a mini-boss. We don't know it yet, but each one of those 4 squares indicates one encounter with that boss. So we fight him in 4 different rooms. That's the 4th one. In the first one, there's only one of those squares. Second, 2, 3, 3, and so on and so forth. Here's a little bit of the twist of how mini-bosses work, because obviously you don't often fight more than one, and we actually have not only 2 mini-bosses, but one of those we encounter 4 times. Which is a very, very different experience for a Zelda game. And for a franchise that is complained about for not experimenting much with its conventions, this is actually a pretty nifty twist. Now we don't actually need to go that way yet, so we won't. Let us go forwards. And we are going to need ourselves some bombs. Now, how will I do against this boss is pretty random. It seems his weak point is a little bit finicky. So you'll probably notice if you watch the pre-play that he's actually getting to move and that he can jump, which I don't think came up in the pre-play actually, or at least not to the 4th form. And as you can notice, a single block, indicating our first battle's done with. And here we have a little bit of extra convention twisting. Now this is ultimately not changing very much, you know, but it does set up a little bit of a plot contrivance for why you don't have the item yet. Now if we do this dungeon just a little bit more efficiently, we would probably actually see that the hookshot's a little bit more required than it actually is. But for now, we don't quite know we don't quite know the full importance of the hookshot. But let's kill him again. One of the sad things about Link's Awakening, despite probably being one of my favourite Zelda games, is that it is a bit easy. And that makes it a bit refreshing, I guess. But it does kind of spoil the charm a bit as well. Rightio, and that, and kill the last one. Now, I'm unsure because it's been a while since we have not had red clothes. I'm beginning to wonder if the red clothes actually speed up the rate which you can pick up things like pots and things. Because if it has been, that's probably saved us a fairly considerable amount of time. Like, you know, half a second here, half a second there, but overall, that's a pretty big investment given how many pots you left. And what's in this room? Anyway, in previous forum posts, in one of the forums I'm posting this in, I've commented that I thought Catfish's Maw was my favourite dungeon. Well, I like the things it does, like playing with the idea of mini-bosses and the hookshot being, being taken hostage by the boss. It's not really so interesting overall in the end. Like, it's got some nice gimmicks, but they don't really change much. The mini-boss himself is not that interesting. The hookshot doesn't really do a lot of interesting things, or they don't do a lot of interesting things with the hookshot, as the drawbridges do actually become glorified keys, much the opposite of what I remembered them being like. So, I guess I'm a little bit disappointed in this dungeon actually, because I remembered it being so much more than what it was. I think I've established in previous episodes that I'm not too fussed about the quality of Link's life. You know, I'm fine with him being beaten fairly mercilessly. Although if he was a girl, you'd all be complaining. Well, you probably wouldn't be actually, but given various controversy around the new Tomb Raider and things like that, you might well be. So, the final battle. I do like the idea that we can actually outlast the undead. I mean, that's either pretty crappy undeadness, or a really, really awesome Link. What I do like about this boss though is that we actually have seen this room before. Like, you might not have gone into it, but really, in a Zelda game, when you had an option to go into a room, would you really not take it if it was the only room on offer that you hadn't already seen? Important to note, that is the only dungeon item in the game that you actually pick up just lying around, that you don't actually open a chest for. And that's a very minor thing. But gee, it feels different. Which possibly shows how ingrained the Zelda conventions are, that it feels special when you don't open a chest for an item. Ah! I can commit masked genocide finally! The hookshot looks weird. There's no two ways around it. The hookshot just looks weird. Let's grab our chest. Now the Catfish's Maw makes us pretty wealthy actually, since we're not spending any money on our items because we don't have any more to buy really. This makes the Maw pretty luxurious because we're going to end up with about 900 and something I think by the end of this. Oh, but time first to go through some of these places. Now what's here? That's right, that's just a stone beak or something I think. Which we don't need, so we're not going to bother with it. Jump, 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 jump. Now, I'm pretty sure that I need an extra key, so I better deal with that first. Yes, I will need an extra key. Hopefully it is here. That's perfect. Do I have full arrows? I don't have full arrows. Time to get some more arrows. Now, I do think it's pretty strange that arrows are being so on offer here. I mean, it suits the dungeon in a sense, because we do get a decent bit of money here. So this is probably, in all practicality, the first time we would actually be able to afford the bow and arrow. Which is probably when it's balanced for existing. Also, these bosses can be fought with the hookshot, but it does appear that the bow and arrow is a better choice. Which saddens me to use my lovely expensive arrows, but there'll be ways to replenish them. Arrows are really powerful. It is important to know that, like, bomb arrows are, of course, more powerful. But I've actually found a little bit in this playthrough, like when fighting the golem in the color dungeon, that you often don't need bomb arrows when you would consider them. Right, that's that. So that's a teleport, which we don't really need at the moment, I don't think. The pieces of power do not aid the feeling that this is an easy game. They really don't. For now, I don't think we really need the sword, so let's not bother. Which is heresy to Zelda fans, I'm sure. That's right, we need a keyhole. Or we need a key, actually. And that's not of much use, so let's try... Oh wait, that's a Windfish song. Now what you may have noticed looking at the inventory is that there's actually only one space left. Which means that there's actually only one dungeon item left in the entire game. The rest are just upgrades and other little bits and pieces, but nothing that's really substantial. Now the question is, can I remember which way actually will get me something useful? So I've already done all that, so there's no need to worry about that. So it must be, that's right, it's through here and north through that little push block 2 thing section, which is really quite descriptive, isn't it? But despite the fact that there were no real strong descriptive nouns there, you knew exactly where I was referring to. And that is really quite magical. And actually, do I even have the boss key? No, I don't have the boss key. I better get the boss key. I'm paranoid now. Did I just not notice it? Yes, I actually don't have the boss key. Where's the boss key? I can't remember. It must be down there. No, that's the thing. Oh, that's right. I remember now. It's in the pool of water. Now, interestingly, you can use the hookshot underwater, but there are limitations. You can only shoot it forwards and backwards. Luckily, I don't actually recall there being any situations you need to use it underwater, for the pretty obvious reason that you usually can jump out of water fairly easily, and the whole game's balanced around that kind of thing. I don't need to change items, I already have the hookshot. Alright, so there was a little bit of aimless wandering around here, but not so much. And we might as well just use the ocarina again to get to the front of the dungeon. I'm not sure how much time this ultimately saves, but the ability to shift to the front of the dungeon at will does come in handy in a lot of dungeons. The more complex dungeon, usually the more useful this function is. Although, I'm just wondering now in my mind, how often does that mean I'll be using it in the Eagle's Tower, which is probably the most interesting dungeon in the game? Right, that's done. Now the hookshot isn't really super duper powerful, but it is nifty, and having to switch your items less frequently is always a good thing. Because if there's one thing that is wrong with the GB Zeldas, it's that they get bogged down by having to constantly switch items. If I could have 4 items equipped at any point, that would be luxury. Now, I did put it in a link to one of my previous videos, and I don't want to date these videos too much in future, But there is a really interesting Zelda-like game on Kickstarter at the moment called Cryomore, and it looks like it could be something really quite special. It might not be, but they've definitely got the right interests. They've talked about Brave Fencer Musashi, I think it's called. I've never played it. I've been told I should play it a dozen times now, according to some people. That's right, I actually hooked up this dungeon. Now, this boss is probably one of the more puzzly bosses in the game, in that it's less about being fast and more about knowing where to go, but there is still a bit of puzzle there. Sorry, there is still a bit of action here. Some people do this boss by just waiting around for the thing to appear near them. Even though it can seem a little bit less efficient, I do enjoy just trying to do what comes because it feels better. Ah! Explode! Ah, who cares about life? It's only a legendary hero. I wonder if that always happens when I pull them out loud. Out far. Yeah. I don't want to have to pay Crazy Tracy money. That is a lot. Oh! Hang on, sorry. No! Come on, boss, die! I'm going terribly here. And that was not even far enough. So, if you haven't noticed, we're actually trying to expose the heart of the serpent. Now this represents a little bit of a thematic turning point actually, because from now on the game becomes a little bit more aware that you're in a dream world. An area we call the Face Shrine actually does emphasize this even more. If we were to be talking with all the inhabitants, we'd also be getting a lot more conversation in regards to what might be happening to the island. It's sort of... yeah, it's a very interesting thing to put in a Zelda game specifically. This questioning of the characters actually existing. Well, next episode will be a variety of little minigame stuff actually. Not minigame, but side questy things. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next episode.